Welcome to the Factory Ops Exchange podcast, hosted by the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Guidewheel. I'm Lauren Dunford, CEO of Guidewheel and Executive Committee member of the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing. Today I'm joined by Juan Carlos Alonso, most recently Chief Strategy Officer at Bekaert, a leader with decades of experience in manufacturing at the highest levels. He shares some great stories from how he actually identified 15 to 20% energy savings across their 80 plants by bringing together people with different levels of expertise, kinds of expertise on the factory floor, and then was able to align those teams around delivering on the savings. In general, he has some fantastic insights on how strategy meets execution, how to drive change while bringing people along for that journey, and how focusing on the fundamentals can unlock big impact. Let's get started. Thank you so much for making time today and excited to dive in. First area, if you wouldn't mind just describing, how did you get into manufacturing? Were there moments you remember when you just kind of got hooked on the industry?
Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for the invitation. It's fantastic to be here. Certainly, I started my career in management consulting, actually.
Yeah.
But very early on, had a lot of experience or a lot of projects in the industrial goods area.
Yeah.
Industry, I've always enjoyed the industry. I like the tangible aspect of it, the transformation of materials into something useful, something that we use day to day. It's something that always caught my eye. It's maybe not the most exciting industry for many people nowadays, but so important and so basic in how we live that I always enjoyed that part of that industry, and always enjoyed looking at, well, how to make it better. Better not only kind of on the pure operational side, but more kind of thinking, well, what does the market need? What do people need? How can we resolve those needs by then technology in manufacturing, and linking then strategy to both the, of course, coming from the market, but through the operational side, through the manufacturing operations at the end that have to deliver what is needed in the market.
Yeah. So many challenges and so many opportunities to really make a big difference through what manufacturing can do. Any defining moments for you? Times you remember that really reinforced that area?
Yeah, for me, maybe two moments. I think one, talking about that need to link to the market. I remember when one of my first projects in BCG at the time was with a building materials company, and our project was basically working with their commercial distribution side on helping them how to grow the market. And one of the things that I realized at that time is that what we thought kind of from the strategic kind of ivory tower side that looked very nice on paper, when you went to talk with customers and with the distributors, which were independent entrepreneurs that took the brand to the market, was so different that's what at the end made me move from the consulting side into what I call real life. Because in reality, there's many concepts that are simple. If you think in that particular case, we were talking about the CRM implementation. So simple, the concept. When you have to implement it with real people, salespeople on the ground that have each of them their own way of working, each of them their own background, education, their own beliefs on what you're going to do with the data that they will input, it becomes really complex as an implementation execution. In reality, it becomes much more complex than one nice slide that you had as a consultant, right? And similarly, kind of in manufacturing, maybe a second story that for me was quite revealing. When I joined Bekaert in 2019, one of the topics that I had in mind in my early tenure as an area of opportunity was energy efficiency. Now, for a company that is heavy manufacturing, uses a lot of electricity, I thought, well, electricity should be something that is top of mind, that there's programs established, etc. And it was not the case. There were indeed in different factories, there were some initiatives, but it was kind of a shock moment for me when I realized that there's no real organized program to work on energy efficiency. Being such an important input, such an important part of the cost, such an important element of our day-to-day, that it was not something that anybody was looking at with real strategy, real ambition to change it. And that made me realize that how many, you could say even quick wins, you could have even in a business that has been running for 140 years, and that you would imagine that everything is optimized. Not at all. Far away from that. So many opportunities to tackle. So those two, I think, some key moments in my career of kind of realizing how much opportunity and how much you need to be really on the ground to make things happen, and not just kind of in the boardroom defining strategies, but really how do you end up executing, implementing them for them to make impact.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I could not agree more with so much of that, and it's fascinating, so much of the contrast between theory and reality, and also so much of the excitement of discovering how many quick wins there still are to capture, where people wouldn't expect just resonate so strongly. I'd love to learn more about how you approached the energy efficiency side, both strategically, quick wins, because you were in a really exciting role there. I think you were coming in as Chief Strategy Officer. So you had the opportunity to look at the entire org differently. How did you approach it?
Two different things. And I'll talk first about energy efficiency, since you asked about that. But the second one that I wanted to talk about is also about kind of the strategic market side of the business.
Yes.
So on the energy efficiency side, as I mentioned, we realized, well, this could be an area of significant impact. Both from, for me, one of the things that I really like about energy efficiency is it helps on the economic side. Clearly, any energy you don't use, it's a saving. But it helps so much on the sustainability front as well. You don't need to use any resource to generate that electricity that you will not use. So and it can be electricity, it can be any energy source. But that's a topic that for us it came both sides. On one side from the cost efficiency side, on the other one from our sustainability strategy perspective. And the way that we decided to tackle it was, as I mentioned, there was no organized effort at that time. And so we decided to, well, initially the thought was, well, let's discuss with the operational heads, the real incorporate the heads of manufacturing, the head of engineering, and let's figure out what do they believe is possible. In their view, yeah, there were improvements possible, but in the order of, let's say, 2, 3, 4% improvement. And in their view, it requires significant capital. It required a lot of effort to do so. We maybe a bit naive at that time. We thought, well, no, this 2, 3%, there should be more because if there's no organized effort, then we have 80 manufacturing plants around the world with more or less same operations. There should be opportunities to find out best practices and do more. So what we decided to do was to do a small pilot. We took one of the plant managers that was more open to explore and more that had a kind of a strong belief on sustainability as a value. We worked in his plant, and we brought people from different plants, experts, you could say experts, or people with experience, but from different generations. We had people that had been in the business 30 years, some people that had good education as engineers and had just 2-3 years of experience, but that were in the plant day to day. Yeah. And with no, let's say, no limitations in their thinking because they were relatively new and they saw this as an opportunity. Yeah. So we put them to work together for a week or two with the head of the plant and to explore with no limitations. Capital, we will figure out afterwards. And what they found was that they could find 15 to 20% energy efficiency opportunities. Yes. Now, some of them indeed require quite significant capital, but many of them just require a different way of thinking. Just small adjustments in the plant, identifying where leaks were that nobody had looked at. A lot of, I mean, it ended up being 200 initiatives, a lot of small things, but that when you add them up, they become very significant. And just a couple of big things that require investment, but typically those investments were with quite an interesting return of 3-4 years, which is not too bad. So after that pilot, we decided to extend it to another 4 or 5 plants, and we found the same, between 15 and 20%. Yeah. And then we extended to not all the plants, but 30 or 40 of the plants. Wow. And we started executing on many of those opportunities. At the time that I left a few months ago, we were half of the way on the implementation of it. Wow. So we got about 9% energy efficiency improvements versus the baseline at that time, which is, from a cost perspective, again, quite important, but from a sustainability perspective, super impactful. So I think in my experience, just kind of removing a little bit the typical limitations of the way that we used to think and the experts that know everything, and bringing a diversity of opinions, of experiences, and without those boundaries, you can end up with very nice improvements that are really significant and are really impactful.
Yeah. Wow. I love that story. And specifically the way you approached the change management aspect of folks having a perception that ended up being different from reality. Anything as you were going along that journey that you tried and it didn't work, or that you are glad you did from a how do we get this to bring people along on the journey perspective?
I would say maybe a learning that I find it quite useful to reflect on afterwards. I think we did one good thing, which was on the change management side, what I mentioned of involving a lot of people from the operational side, from different plants, different geographies, different experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing that we overlooked, kind of in our willingness to move fast and to make impact, was that we stepped on quite a few feet on the way, and that after several years, there were a lot of hard feelings around the perspective that we had really rammed through with a sustainability strategy without really involving or bringing everybody along. And we certainly make a lot of impact, but I would say, for it to be more sustainable and for it to really get to the potential, we should have brought more people along. And we overlooked some people that eventually ended up moving positions and have quite some influence in the future strategy of the business and the future operational priorities of the business. Yeah. And the fact that we can push through sustainability so strongly became a bit of a painful point still today. So maybe if I would do it again, I would take more people along and would take a more diverse set of opinions. And okay, well, you can never please everybody, right? But it's I think it's important to take a step back and think through all the different stakeholders, not only of today, but that could be stakeholders in the future, and how to bring them along. Maybe Lauren, if you allow me, one of the other things that I wanted to mention, kind of besides the energy efficiency side, I think one of our other important topics when I joined Bekaert as Chief Strategy Officer was, what is our strategy, right? Yes. And one of the elements that I think many manufacturing companies fail to do is to really bring the market in. We're full of technical experts that love to design new products and to push the plants, to push the operations. And many times you bring new products, but nobody wants them. They're not really meeting a true need or an important need for anybody. So one of the things that we decided to do, because after many years of that, many times you get it right, but not always. But after many years of following that kind of product out perspective, we were basically in 23 different markets on a global basis, 23 different industries that we served with hundreds and hundreds of products. Profitability-wise, that was a big drag. You don't know, all your capital gets really dispersed into, doesn't really make impact. Sales people don't know what to prioritize. So one of the first things that we did was, well, we need to understand better the market. Yes. Even if we've been in the market 140 years, there's many things we don't understand. So we went to the market and we gathered much more clarity on where the needs are. And then we worked on defining priorities. So we trimmed our portfolio very strongly. We decided there are 3 industries that are really interesting from a growth perspective, from a needs perspective, and let's focus on those. There's others that, we have maybe good products, etc., but they're really creating too much complexity for the benefit that they bring, and we trim those down. Yeah. Some of them we maintained, but just with little attention, little capital, and really refocus our resources into where can it make a difference. So we decided to focus on energy. This energy industry, of course, on their big transformation, and that brings new needs and opportunities. Into construction, which for me is one of the most interesting industries, or most interesting towards the future, because if you look at any of the big industries, construction is the one that has really not advanced in productivity. If you take a view of a century, all other industries have really advanced. Construction, we still build very much as we did a century ago. Yes, with some improvements, but in the order of magnitude compared to other industries, very limited. And then from a sustainability aspect as well, with a great opportunity to make progress. And the third one on mobility, because of course another industry that is under big transformation with a lot of moving pieces. So we decided to focus on those 3 and develop our growth opportunities on those markets.
I love it. And I love the combination of seeing not only similar to your other example you shared of thinking not just about today, but where things will be in the future.
Correct.
And then aligning your strategy to that and that principle of focus as well. One of my a person I respect a ton shared a book the other day, Islands of Profit in a Sea of Red Ink, that I have been diving into and finding extremely valuable towards that concentration of SKUs and understanding truly what are the most profitable areas. Yeah, love it.
And you could say that about almost any area of the business, right?
Yes.
Choosing priorities, especially choosing what not to work on, is difficult, but it's super important because we have limited resources, limited time. Focus where you can make the most impact.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it's difficult.
It is. Easy to say, hard to do in practice. Oh my gosh. Okay, the time is flying. So I want to make sure I can get us into the topic of digital and AI and your thoughts on that. How are you thinking about that area? What advice would you give to other manufacturing leaders thinking about strategy for that right now?
I think it's a difficult area for manufacturing industry. I think it's certainly relatively simple when you talk about the operation itself.
Yes.
We did a lot around artificial intelligence for many years on optimization of materials for galvanization, for example, or of optimization of motors, or many things operational wise. For engineers, for technical people, this is kind of natural way of thinking.
Yes.
Now, when you think about the other areas of the business, where can AI make a significant impact? There's some areas that I believe that there's a lot of potential to be made. Areas that have, as in manufacturing, repetitive tasks.
Yes.
If you think about anything around back office, if you think about internal sales, if you think about in research and development, a lot of the activities are very repetitive activities where they are complex, they have many inputs, and where artificial intelligence can really help to make it more efficient, to then again to try to find out what are the things that really matter and to focus on those. But I find manufacturing industry very backwards thinking or at many times, of course, there's many exceptions, but in my experience, many times thinking very conservatively, very risk averse about experimenting with AI in all these other areas of the business. So I had that belief at Bekaert that we could make an impact, but I couldn't get traction. It's one of the things that I left with kind of the feeling of we could have really impacted much more if we had moved along, but I couldn't get traction with many of my peers in the executive committee. It was never one of those priorities on which we focus, and therefore we didn't make much progress. I would say, kind of as an advice, I think there's a lack of knowledge overall in, I would say myself as well, but in management overall, lack of knowledge of the potential of the really what is possible. So exposing executive committee members that at the end have quite an impact on setting the priorities, exposing to good examples, to go and see what other people maybe in other industries are doing, how they're making impact with that. I had the opportunity recently to go to an artificial intelligence fair and to see just simple things like sales agents, the way that artificial intelligence can bring the key topics, key questions to make kind of in a really very efficient way when a salesperson is making a pitch, where it's reaching to a customer. If you think about doing it manually or the traditional way, you don't do it because it takes a lot of time. It's complex. Most people don't do it. If you think that you can have it automatically there by putting really not a very complex solution behind, it can be quite impactful. And just looking at it, that somebody actually working on it, it's not rocket science at all. But many times people think, oh, this is super complex. I'll wait. I will understand it later and I will implement it later. But it moves so fast that if you don't start today, you're already very late, but you would only be much later.
Yeah. Amazing. I wish we had hours. This is great. Maybe just any last words of things that you're following in terms of podcasts or books, advice that you have before we close.
Well, I would say maybe there's a lot of moving pieces today, especially around trade, and that makes a big impact on on strategy. Where do you look? Where do you put your investments? Where do you locate your manufacturing plants? How do you evolve your footprint? And it's really complex now. So for me, that's one of the topics that I'm quite interested on. Still don't have a magic solution for that. It's it really changes every day, and with no or difficult to see the logic to how it's evolving. So it's difficult to plan for that, but of course, extremely important to follow up how this is developing. So I think I've moved from reading books and podcasts to watching the news and reading analysis of what is happening, because there's so much change happening today. But my advice would be, don't stay in your bubble, connect with people outside in industry, customers, suppliers, because there's at the end we need to resolve these kind of situations as an ecosystem with partners which are seeing different elements as well of the same environment, and trying to figure it that way. I was not a big fan of scenario planning in the past, but today I'm becoming a big fan of scenario planning because indeed with so much movement, at least figuring out what are the 2-3 things that you need to do in whatever scenario, it helps to keep moving. So my best advice would be not to sit on it, not to wait for, let's see what happens. You need to start doing some things now. So figure out what would work on the most probable scenarios, work on that, and keep an eye on, an ear out and an eye on with your partners around on what is happening and what will be the best way to continue making an impact.
A huge thank you to Juan Carlos for sharing his insights. It's a great reminder that transformation needs to start with listening to people closest to the work. If this episode sparks ideas, share it with a colleague, and follow the Factory Ops Exchange for more conversations on driving real impact in manufacturing. Thanks for tuning in.